Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Moy Style podcast. Well, first of all, before we get started, I wanted to apologize to you guys because I haven't been able to post an episode in a long, long time. So I apologize about that. Hopefully, we can get rolling here in the next few weeks, so we can get coaches and players out there that can bring value to you guys, and that's the whole point of this podcast. But today we got head coach Brian Hunnicutt. He's the head coach for Westmoore High School, 6A, here in Oklahoma. And so I thought it would be great to interview him because he's the current state champ. I'm actually part of the coaching staff too, so it was pretty cool to be part of the first time coaching high school for me and being able to be part of it. So and win it all. So, Coach Honig, I appreciate you for being on today, man. If you don't mind introducing yourself so people can kind of get to know you a little bit, and then we'll get rolling with the question.
Okay. Well, first, thanks for having me. Yeah, I am Brian Hunnicutt, head coach here at Westmoore. This past season was my first season. Long time assistant here. Played here. Graduated 2004, and then went to USAO. Graduated in 2008, and then kind of transitioned back into coaching. So been here for a while as an assistant, and yeah, this past year is my first year as head coach.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We actually went to the same college, at least my last 2 years, and I didn't even know anything about it until until I got here. But I thought it was pretty cool. Now I'm sure you've been asked this question like 10,100 times, but how does it feel to be a state champ?
I mean, as you can imagine, it feels great.
Yep.
Pretty special feeling. Really, the very interesting. I think it finally fully kicked in just this past Tuesday, the last day of school, and I don't know what it was, if it was because it was graduation day or whatnot, and finally realizing these seniors aren't going to be around for much longer, but finally some emotions hit me, and I think it really sunk in, like just exactly what we did and how special it was.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty fun. Especially I never knew what to expect because I never actually played high school here in the U.S. So you and Goody were telling me how everything works out, and it's pretty funny how you were talking about. You guys were talking about whoever gets hot at the right time is the ones that normally will come out on top. So now, what do you think? I know it's kind of hard to pinpoint, like the secret sauce, but what do you think is a couple of the keys that you think got us there to stay and then win it all?
The biggest thing, I mean, I think there's several factors, but number one, we had a great nucleus of seniors of experience that have been there before, know how to win in big situations. Um, and then, of course, I mean, really just it all kind of came together. Pitching, defense, really turned it on there in the regional. Offense, of course, came alive there in the state tournament. And I think all of that comes back to, yes, those seniors, but just the hard work, the process. They all had faith in it, even though we had some ups and downs in the season.
Right.
They just kept after it. And the thing I've said probably the most to anybody that's asked is, this team just never panicked, no matter what the situation, no matter the score. They never panicked, and they just got the job done.
Right, and I know you said that all year, and that these guys never panic. That's so true because especially some of our guys, they're pretty laid back, and somehow we were pretty good at coming back. Even though when we hit kind of a rough patch there mid season, but we still came back, and nobody really looked panicked at all. Now, the whole point of this episode, now that we talked a little bit about the state championship, it's really about how to earn a spot in the starting lineup at the varsity level. I know, like Coach Hunnicutt said, he's been in high school, quite a few years coaching here, and so I know I can pick his brain on this, and I'm sure a lot of parents will benefit from this and players out there. So the first thing that I wanted to ask you was, like, if you're seeing a freshman for the first time, it's like what do you think is something that stands out the most if you haven't heard about that freshman at all? I know we play, red dirt, like summer ball and all this stuff, but if you haven't heard about that freshman at all, what would be one thing that stands out the most, or a couple of things?
Well, I mean, I think as much as you don't necessarily always want this to be the case, you can't you can't look past the fact of just what you see, like what's their size, like what's their strength, what's their metrics. I mean, I think that's the first thing you just notice without really getting to know what kind of ball player they are. And so, I mean, that I feel like that's just the nature of it. There is sometimes those things are the first things you see, and um, that can be a good thing, but it can be unfortunate for the especially for the ones that maybe don't have that right this second, but they have the right kind of intangibles, the character, they have the right just
Right.
I think you know what I'm saying. Just the types of kids you can't just tell what kind of kid they are just when they walk up. So the first things again are, I mean, you see are kind of the metrics, what the measurables, what they look like, but it's pretty cool when you really get to know the kid on the inside and see what kind of ball player they are there.
Right, and that's one thing that I noticed about a lot of the freshmen because when I first got here, obviously I didn't know anybody, and this is my first year here, so I was just kind of going off of what you guys have seen before. But it's crazy to see because at first you don't think some of them may have a shot, but then as the season progresses, I'm like, well, you know what? I kind of changed my mind now. So some of them actually excelled and that did a lot better throughout the year. So now, what are some of the things that that they need to do to be able to earn a spot especially at the varsity level in the starting lineup? Like
So
just I'm not mean to interrupt, but just overall, not just freshmen.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think it I think there's a lot of factors that play in. Sometimes it's just as simple as how many people are at your same spot or how many people are you competing with here or there. But basically, the biggest thing to find your way in the starting lineup is, I mean, I think number one, again, like I said, right or wrong, you have to be able to have the ability to do it. Like you have to be able to go hit the baseball. You have to be able to throw the baseball. As much as we want the really good kid to be the one that plays, that's not always accurate. I mean, it's just not always the way it works out. Now, saying that, when your high end talented players are also your high good character kids, that's when you have a really special team. But I mean, I think basically you do have to have those measurables, or maybe not measurables, but you do have to be able to go do the simple things.
Right.
And then consistency comes into play. Can you do it consistently? And the biggest thing I think that we have to weigh as coaches is just, what do you bring to the table compared to some of these other guys? Like, I mean, is your glove your best aspect? Is it offense? How do we balance that? If it's both, obviously we're probably going to find a place for you.
Right.
And so I think that's just kind of the balancing act of a coach, is taking kids maybe with different skill sets and figuring out how they best fit together to help us win. And I think it's important to say that how you start may not always be the lineup you finish with, because it is a constant juggle as coaches to figure out what goes best where.
Right, that's a good point because I remember at the beginning of the year we would think, well, this is gonna be the starting lineup, and then throughout the season things just started to change, and just kind of it could be a little bit of a roller coaster sometimes. So it's a good point. Now, I know a lot of players will go, now that we finished their high school season, they'll go and play summer ball, whether they're a freshman, sophomore, junior. So what do you think, like, just to get them prepared for next year? Like, what do you think they should focus on? Should they focus on more, on game reps, or working on their specific skills they need to work on? Like, what do you think? What do you recommend?
I think that's kind of just player specific. Some people might be better off going to get more game reps, while others may need to spend more time just kind of in the lab working on something. But the biggest thing I would say is if you're going to play summer baseball, do it with the purpose. Like don't just go out there to mess around and whatever. Make sure you're getting better. Make sure you're not getting worse than where you left off in the season. Make sure you're focusing on Anything that you got better at throughout the season, focus on that. Anything that you realize throughout this past season may still be a weakness, obviously work on that. And then I'd say just the little things, base running aspects, things like that, just still continue to work on those things. Don't take the summer off. Yes, baseball should be fun, but make sure we're still working on the right things and not just going through the motions out there.
Yeah, it's a good point because I know a lot of players out there will just go out just to play, and like you say, it's fun. But at the same time, if you have a goal, especially for next year, I think you need to take the time to be able to work on the stuff that maybe your weaknesses or even your strength. Continue to improve that. So now, going back to the starting lineup. So I got two questions. So what would you look for in a starting pitcher at the varsity level, and what would you look for in a position player?
So starting pitcher, basically, it's one of those. I mean, there's kind of a cookie cutter thing you look for, and then sometimes it's well, this guy actually gets the job done even though he doesn't fit that. And I think that kind of fits the mold this year a little bit, because typically you want a guy that can throw probably 3 pitches for a strike. Doesn't have to have high velo, but obviously that's a plus if they can. But basically, really be able to pitch and get hitters out. Throw a lot of strikes. And all that stuff, and so and like I was saying, this year, our main starters threw really a lot of fastballs, but it's because their fastballs were tough to hit, things like that. And so this year's staff is probably a little different than how I would normally piece a staff together. But yeah, if you have something. If you have a different kind of fastball that's got a lot of movement or a lot of ride to it, I think that definitely plays at the varsity level. But again, as a starter, I think typically you would want to have a good mix of at least 3 pitches.
Right. Yeah. And what about for position players?
Position players, I think it goes back to that balancing act. Are we going to put you in the lineup to hit? Are we going to put you in the lineup because your glove is good? And typically, for the most part, you really only want to have one guy that's just in there for his glove. So, we do need to be able to swing the bat at the varsity level. But basically, just consistency. Can you make the routine plays regularly? And that's basically what I would look for.
Right. Now, I know this kind of... Hey, guys, as an appreciation for hanging out with me this long, I want to give you 10% off for any of my 2 online Infield courses. So you have the Master of Art Fielding course. You can get 10% off that for either the monthly or the yearly. And you can also get 10% off if you purchase the mini course, which is the Master in Fielding Timing. When you go over here to my full course, you're going to have access to over 250 lessons that you can choose from. Just make sure you type in Moy Podcast 10 to get 10% off. And if you follow step by step how I have it set up in this program, I guarantee you're going to see results. Going back and forth here, but what do you think would be one thing that would get players in trouble? Whether it be either in school or on the field, that can actually hurt their playing time, the varsity level.
Get them in trouble. It's one of those things we talk about kind of all the time. It's somebody that's just typically not a very good teammate, and it's someone that we preach a lot of positivity here and being positive with each other, and if you're someone that is usually negative minded, and a lot of it comes down to how someone handles adversity. And so typically most people, and I'll say this, your true colors come out whenever you face adversity for the most part. And so a lot of times those things show when something goes wrong for an individual, and if they're one that either throws fits, blames others, coaches, teammates, whatever it is, that's really not the type of person that we want around our program. You typically call them a cancer in the locker room or whatever. And so really a lot of things that get kids in trouble is up top. It's an immaturity on how to deal with adversity, how to work with people. And those are things that we try to build and strengthen while we're here.
Oh, it's a great point too, because you have, I already muted this, and now somebody's calling me. I apologize, but we really have a lot of players here, so you're not the only one. You know what I mean? So if you don't, it's not all baseball. You have to be able to be a good teammate, like you said, and be able to be strong up here too, because especially when you go into regionals and state, everything counts. So you can't really can't get weak at those games. Now, going back to the starting lineup. So how do you decide who gets to play that day?
Again, I mean, I've said it a few times, but it's kind of a balancing act. I think, obviously, if you're looking at a particular position, if someone's got the hot hand at that time, whether they're on fire hitting or whatever, I mean, I think it's pretty assumed that they should get the go. But the tough part is going with somebody that may be struggling offensively or may have had some struggles. How do you know when to make a switch? Things like that. And I think it's tough. It's balancing what that kid can do versus what is he currently doing, and it's hard to do that. And so a lot of times, I mean, I trust and I rely on the other assistants that may coach that position, and we kind of talk it out as a group to see what who gives us the best chance to win that day. And so it may be different from day to day, but I really do think it is kind of a balancing act, because it's not. To me, it can't just be stats necessarily. I think there's a human element that plays in there. And so, there were a lot of times this past season, I think all of us, or maybe sometimes just me, I just went with my gut and said, I know this is the right call for this right time. So.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. Sometimes you will come up with a couple of calls, and I'm like, I don't think that's it. And then we end up pulling it off. I'm like, well, good job. so that's why you're the head coach. So now there's probably a pretty tough question, but if you're not in the starting lineup, right, but you're at the varsity level, what do you think you should do in the meanwhile? Because I know obviously everybody wants to play, at the varsity level, but there's only so many positions. So
Sure.
What would you do, while you wait for your shot?
So I have a couple of answers to that. Number one, Coach Robichaux that used to coach at Louisiana Lafayette passed away. But one of his quotes was "Work while you wait." So it's and I've said this. To me, this has been the hardest thing as a head coach, learning to do besides like paperwork and administrative things. The hardest thing is when you've got 12, 13, 14 kids that could potentially are good enough to play for your team, but only 9 of them can go in the lineup. That's the toughest thing that I've experienced as a head coach is how to kind of work with that and not ruin those relationships and all that. But to the player themselves, just know, one, that it is tough for the coach, but two, work while you wait. That's Coach Robichaux's quote, work while you wait. And so, while it may not be your turn at the time, just keep working, keep the right mental process, okay? I think that's huge because you never know when you're going to get called upon. You never know when someone's going to get hurt, and you're going to have to go in and fill a role for an extended period of time. And then the other thing I'd say is don't minimize your role. Because I think every role is important, whether you get to play every day, or whether you're the courtesy runner, or you're a pinch hitter or pinch runner, or your job is just to be the best teammate in the dugout that day. I think every job's important. I think every role is important. And so don't minimize that. And whatever you find yourself doing that day, do it to the best of your ability. And that's what I would say.
That's pretty good stuff because especially that quote, I kind of have the same quote. Not that I came up with, I stole it from somebody else, but hustle while you wait. Kind of the same thing you're saying, because sometimes a lot of sometimes at the really at any level, college or high school, a lot of people think, well, I'm not gonna get the stars. I'm just not gonna work hard, and you never know when that opportunity is gonna come up. Now I'm trying to keep it short because I know you have somewhere to be. You're pretty busy. You've been pretty busy all week. So what would be any? I don't know if you have any tips or recommendations for parents and players out there that are about to start their high school journey.
Um, yeah, just probably just kind of going with some of the things, some of the things we've been talking about. Number one, it goes back to in talking about our state championship team this year. It just goes back to again a maturity, and I know that that comes at different times for everybody. But the sooner that you can realize that failure and it one day doesn't have to define you the rest of the days or the rest of the time, or basically just being able to handle that adversity in a mature way, just keep showing up the next day over and over and over again, is one of the biggest things that I think is important, that was very important for me to learn. Just going back to, we talked about red dirt. We have these tryouts, these one-day tryouts, and unfortunately, we don't get to know the players that well in them, and it's just the nature of it. So, like I said, it kind of goes back to those measurables and those metrics, and just understand that that's not necessarily the best way to pick a team, but in the time constraints we're under, that's just how we have to do it. And so, what I'd say is, like, if you don't make a team for whatever reason, just keep working. Work while you wait. Work till it's your time. And handle that the best way you possibly can.
Great stuff, man. I really appreciate you for being on today. I know you were pretty busy, but I wanted to get rolling with the interviews and with the next episodes to be able to help out as many people out there. So I appreciate you guys for watching or listening. And if you guys have any recommendations, anybody you would like me to interview, or any topics you have in mind, please comment below. And till next episode.